Hey guys, it's Baileywiki, and it is March 3rd of 2024. This is the big release for this month. We've got tons and tons of ruins from a 2D perspective for you guys to play with. So many components here, both Dungeondraft and VTT. You're going to be not bored for quite a while. From the 3D side, we've just got some great new assets from Swift, and then the design team of our map makers, former contest winners, have just been coming up with the coolest stuff I've ever seen. Wait till you see some of the maps that they came up with in this release. It's pretty awesome to watch. Of course, the Dungeondraft release is a full release as well, so you not only get all the ruins stuff, but a bunch of other things that we've been busy making, including mimics and effigies and other fun stuff. So with that, let's jump into where to find everything and into the rest of the release. All right, so let's talk about where to find everything. The modules that are updated are going to be the 3D module, the landing pages module that's been remastered, the Baileywiki Maps Towns module, which generally always gets updated because it contains all of the compendiums that you'll need. Also, all of the tiles that are supporting the release go into District 4, the ruins and slums, and also some new macros in Baileywiki Nuts and Bolts. As usual, it will update a few of your compendiums. You want the Baileywiki modular scenes, you'll find the new scenes in there. And then Baileywiki prefabs, the new content one, will have the new content in that one as well. Planning something hopefully pretty interesting with prefabs here, maybe even mid-month, so keep an eye on that. All right, so let's walk through the inventory scenes first. First, we've got the stone ruin walls. So these are really best used as tiles. I just didn't want to make prefabs of all these. It gets too messy and their flexibility is too good on their own. So you really just want to bring them up in your tile browser. If you don't use it already, I recommend Dig Down module. It's free by the Ripper. And you just come in here, once you update everything, you just say rebuild file cache, and it will rebuild your file cache so that you can search for these really easily. You can also just click into any of these paths. Grab this path, for example, just copy it under your file picker, paste that path down, and it will show you the folder with all of these in it. If you go up one level, you can then just bookmark this folder. You can see there's quite a bit in here. So depending on what you're using, I'm using File Picker Plus by Ripper, you can add this folder here. So we've got like hundreds of tiles that are meant to just go together. And as you place them down, you start to form the edges of a building, right? It's literally that simple. And, some of these are larger than others, so you can really quickly, put them all together. They're all resizable because none of them, except for ones with maybe little stairs, imply any kind of scale. So you can make these things super big or super small, and they all just kind of go on top of each other. And you'll see some examples here in just a second. Here we have all the prefabs for the ruined rooms. These are just larger rooms, right? If I drag in a player, you can see the scale of these, and these do come with walls. They also come with overhead tiles, just to make things that much easier to throw them together. But just to see all the different pieces, they're all, here's some broken windows, and they're all very plain in color, and that's intentional. It's so that you can actually colorize them, right? So if we wanted this to pick up a different color, maybe one that's on the scene, we can do that, right? We can give it more earth tones. Super tintable, and all the rooms are tagged as ruins also in case you want to select them all in a scene and then tint them all at once. Lots of different flexible rooms with these topper tiles, these overhead tiles. They really work together to create a good sense of height, and as your players are walking through, they can go underneath some of these like vaulting pieces here, and it's a lot of fun. And like I said before, they all fit together, right? So if you threw one down into a scene, and you just wanted to add more clutter, you just add them, right? Just add the clutter. You can resize it smaller or larger. Massive scene, hundreds of tiles. Let's walk through some of these. First of all, we do have some colorable awnings. These are overhead tiles, so you can recolor them, and it works really well with that. So you can have awnings around your scene that, make your ruins like also have some, old, wood and cloth pieces to it. We also have the new Mimic, and I just love these. Artist Raphael made these, and I created a couple of pieces out of them. So here's this Mimic that is really a token with these tentacles attached to it. But then there's also this piece here. When you click it, you see the tentacles actually wrap above the player. I think it's a lot of fun. You can delete it and then unhide this. Just a spawning tile. So you can find this in two different places. You can find the Mimic just itself, the tentacled or the toothed Mimic, or you can drag out its spawning tile, and that will spawn a Mimic. And if I clicked it again, it would spawn more Mimics. So just something fun for you guys to use. You can also find those here in Mass Edit's new prefabs. So if you go to Monk's Active Tiles, you can see we have a Summon Mimic tile. It doesn't have the control token on it, but it works just the same. If that chest was in a square box, it would have showed up on top of it. I just didn't put it on the grid exactly right. So you can find it in both places. But you've got plenty of other tentacles and other things in case you want to use these in other capacities, maybe reaching out of the door or a pit or something like that, or you can just keep putting more tentacles in your mimics. We also have some of these totems and effigies. These are just meant to be able to put around scenes, maybe imply that there's, orcs or something else doing something there. Just a little bit more to decorate your scenes with. They do come as token pack, and you can find them under decor, totems and effigies. If you drag it out, it's just that whole pack of tiles. We have stone ruin floors. These also come as, in the components, you can just drag them out, and then you have all of the different floor types there. Super resizable. You'll use these in a lot of places to fill in floors and other stuff. They come in both square and rectangle. Your bridge is a single combined bridge. You can also drag it out. When you do drag it out to get all three pieces, you can also make it a shattered bridge. Lots of stone pillars. These are all fallen pillars. You've got some bases that are broken. Lots of different components, all resizable, all easy to use. Some of them are in pieces to really just let you put as much on a scene as you want. Here's some pillars where you can actually see some perspective on them, different amounts of perspective depending on where you can place it. And then you've got these really large pillars. And when you drag these out, again, you can resize these, but it comes as an overhead tile with everything kind of set up the way that you need it, but it's also got multi-face tiles in it. So you can change the artwork pretty quickly on the fly. Lots and lots of rubble pieces just to decorate and add more rubble wherever you need it. And I really love these, all these stone ruin statues. These are all statues that are in, for the most part, some degree of fallen, horizontally, but lots of options for dropping in, faces and other things. You'll see how these get used in some of the sample scenes. You can make them very tiny, you can make them very large. They're super usable in lots of different ways. Of course, you can apply, overlay effects to all these also, right? So if we look up our cracks, this last one, random cracks, this is my favorite. Select one of these. This guy's already got some cracks on him. You can see we can just randomize the cracks on that statue. We can go in further and customize it by changing the alpha level and things like that if we want to just make the cracks a little bit more subtle. You can also do the same thing with vines, cobwebs, and really everything else. Here's some of those fallen stone walls. The idea is these were once vertical walls that have fallen, right? So they have windows in them to kind of imply that. And then all of the toppers. So you've got all of these toppers here, all these toppers here. They're all set up as overhead tiles, so your players can go underneath them. Some of them may look similar. But they're not quite. So you can see like these with this dark shadow here. They're good for creating doorways out of a scene or for covering something up and letting your players walk underneath them. It's like these two pieces can be used in different capacities. All very, very resizable. Same thing here. These are meant to be like doors or overheads. So you put them in as overhead tiles and the players can walk underneath them, travel between rooms and things like that. It just helps you make any kind of egress point anywhere you want. Different types of walls and ultimately different types of stairs. So lots and lots of stuff to play with, all with the same kind of recolorable, resizable things that you've seen. We have all of these new scenes from the City of the Dead, and I just created a bunch of areas of the City of the Dead that you can use. You can just drop in and start to use these. They are very flexible. They are made with all the pieces that you just saw. And so one thing I wanted to do is I kind of invented this thing. So this is a background tile. It's the black square tile that you guys have seen before. And of course, it's got the token magic effects filter added to it, right? Where it's got an overlay of, in this case, grass. Well, I wanted to make this even easier to use because sometimes you have to dig down to get to that back tile. So with Zephyr's help, I've got this little control here on these types of screens. And the way you use it is you just click this and it will open up your tile browser. And if you have dig down working and you have indexed, you can just search for tileable as long as I'm in the, I'm in the root folder for all my modules, and it will load all of the tileable textures that you could use for a scene like this. So depending on what you want to go for, right? Maybe we want this to be, kind of this really messed up terrain. Give it a second to load and you've got a new terrain here, right? And you can change this terrain then using this other control. So if we click on this, we can zoom the terrain out. Notice it's getting less and less pixelated. It's getting more just like cracks, and this kind of feels pretty good, this level. And you can move it left and right. So you can move the artwork around. Because these are tileable terrains, up, down, left, and right all works, right? You can even rotate them until you find it in just the right spot. Sometimes I just play around with terrains, and they're the ones that give me the inspiration for how to design the scene. So this control you can also find in the new content. It's just called Control Adjust Terrain Targeting Background tag. Notice that you do have to have the background tag on it, and that's all it takes. And then you can use these to adjust it. Next up is the Shrine of Contest. This is using some of the statues from other releases lit up with some vines applied to them as an overlay. And then it's got some interactable pieces to it as well, right? You can turn that on and off. You can see some of those effigies here stood up. And if you left click, you can open up this pit and see these skeletons from former combatants that were left here. If you then right click those panels, they'll slide back into place. If you're ever curious how they work, the easiest way to get to them is to use tile sort. That lets you see everything on the level, and you can find them here. Just click them open and see how their automation is set up. Then we have a series of stone ruins. These are just to give you really like kind of instant ruins maps. And you can just come in here and start playing them. You can add plot devices and things like that. You can also change their backgrounds from the stone to really anything else that you want. But just an easy, flexible map for you to use as a starting point. You can change everything on them. You can see some of the fallen statue pieces. They all work pretty well together. If you see any torches, they're typically able to be interacted with if you turn down the lights. So just an instant, easy ruins that you can come and make a game out of. I did make a super generic one where you can just start dragging in some of those rooms and make your own ruin pretty quickly that way. I do want to point out these rooms are, because they're prefabs, you can resize them. So we can come in here and we can say, hey, I want this thing to be 2 times the size. And you can make them really big, really quick. And it's really easy to work with them that way. Also in the City of the Dead, we have the old road. The idea is that there's a road coming through town, and it's super tactical. Your players coming in here, however you decide to get them in here, there's a lot hidden behind walls that they'd have to go into these ruins to really explore in detail. And you can come in here yourself and just see, I mean, these are just like those tiles, and everything is tinted to this sort of earthy color, right? I just opened this up, I hit my eyedropper, and I grabbed a color off the background, and I used that as sort of a starting point. And I just gave everything that same color. Also in the City of the Dead is the Necropolis. Just an eerie, this is good at night. You can do it in daytime as well, but just a tried and true battle map with ruins around. Something you can do in any campaign. This ruin traverses a chasm, so I'll turn the lights on and show you in a little bit more detail what this looks like. This also uses the unlimited background, unlimited terrain system. So you can see it drops down here, and then we've got some tiles that have fallen into the chasm. Right? These are just tiles shrunk down and colored differently. There's a statue that's fallen into the chasm, but your players would have to cross this bridge, this broken bridge. And again, more tactical elements here, right? So like players can come and they can, if they walk up close enough, there's a proximity wall here that they can see behind, but if they're too far back, they can't. So if they want to shoot their arrows, they get up here, they can see enemies across. So they have to make a lot of decisions in this map as far as how they might get across safely. The City of the Dead Center is really fun. It's got all of these, it's a huge map. It's got all these different pieces. This one's the occupied version. You can see some of the components, got wagons and things like that that you'd be used to seeing or expect to see in like an occupied sort of area. Things are interactable. You can right click them to change them. You guys have seen some of these interactive pieces before. But I really like these walls and pieces. These are all just the same tiles that you saw before, just used on top of each other, right? So here's that archway. Some of these walls grown up really huge, and it gives it this really nice sense of scale, right? So when your players are in it, they're tiny little nothings with these huge walls around them. I just want to give you some inspiration on how you can make a map like this. There's other versions of the city center, things that you can play around with. This one is unoccupied, so you can put other things into it instead of the decisions I made. The magic altar scene is a lot of fun. Most of this is invisible to your players. Players come in here, it's dark. They can't see any of this stuff here. They can't even see this sort of bird symbol in the middle. They can't see any of this magic. They can just see this altar. When they click on it, that's when everything activates. Everything lights up. This animated tile that's from JB2A's free module. But it's just a way of surprising them. Maybe they fought their way into this area, and now this is where their boss fight is. Okay, then I wanted to just give you ruins inside of different biomes and show you how lots of different sets work together. So here we've got our statues and our ruins, just dropped this in as one big piece. Made some interactable elements, right? You can come in here and play around with this, but the staircase reveals when you click it. You can see how these work together really nicely. And the rest of these are just prefabs. These are just from like the jungle set, right? And they work together to create like a bunch of walls. And when you finally drop your players into it, it gives them something that isn't immediately explored, right? They have to kind of go around and explore it. But we've got vines applied to all of our tiles here to show how flexible they are. They're all tinted, they're cracked, just to give you a good sampling of how you can make these things work. There's a scene from the desert using some of the pieces from the last release. Your players can climb their way up into this ruin here, or defend it if that's what they're doing. They've got a tactically interesting map to do it. This is a great map. It's an overlook, so we're looking at like a town down here in the distance with clouds actually above it. We're sitting up on a mountain in this ruin that looks kind of down over the town, right? And it's a very big map. And our players can run around and look over the side and do all that stuff. But it actually does some automated things as well. If we turn the lights to daytime, if we turn the lights down to darkness, it gives us a different lighting to the scene. And it actually, for players, will change the background. It'll change it from like a daytime to a nighttime view. It actually uses this tile here. It just sort of automatically does it, but it'll change the background for you. Here's a ruin in a forest. Everybody needs one of these. Your players can make their way across this bridge. There's a campsite. There's an animated tile using Jinker's module. You would need that installed if you want that tile to work. Otherwise, you can just delete it. And your players can make it up to this ruin and find their way back here, find a skeleton on the ground, and then a cave that they can enter. Or maybe that's how they get into the map in the first place. And finally, a snowy ruin. You can see all the pieces that we've played around with already. This one's got, frost and ice overlays applied to it. Most of the things in here, in fact, have this sort of frost overlay. I just wanted you to see how to do that. These are all the same exact pieces that we've been playing with, but you can, again, make them put webs and frost and other things on top of them. Right, there it is without the frost applied. So really maximum utility is the goal here. Let you be able to put these things in any kind of map, any kind of biome, and have it work. You can see we're tinting these ruins and everything else is kind of tinted that color. So that's it for the 2D release. I'm going to hand it over to Swift to talk about 3D.
Hey guys, Swift here. Let's take a look at some of the stuff coming in this month's Baileywiki 3D release. I'm going to flip the script a bit this month and start with maps, since we're releasing some exceptional ones this month with the help of Afant and Sephro, who are joining Violet to help us out with the map making. Before I continue on, I'd also like to point out that these maps were all made within 3D Canvas itself, using the resources in Ripper's mapmaking pack and our Baileywiki 3D module. And I think it's pretty neat that no external tools were required. Anyway, the first map we'll take a look at is the Roadside Lodge, which is a very nicely detailed map from Afant, featuring this autumn forest path and this old cabin up on a rise. The old cabin looks abandoned, though it's got this cooking fire outside, and it seems that a hunter was the last one to use it, judging by the pelts hanging up inside. A nice little detail: if your players are particularly perceptive enough, they might be able to spot something under this pelt, and we've got it set up as a sliding door. So it's a secret door, so if you click it, you can just move it aside there and uncover the trapdoor leading downwards. That's a sort of relatively new feature, is the ability to create doors that either move side to side or move up and down, as well as the swinging type. Aside from that, the details around the shack are rather nice, and around the back of it, we've got this rather conspicuous mound of earth. I'm sure anybody who's played Baldur's Gate 3 will see as familiar. This one is another one we've done using the new sliding walls. This mound of earth is actually technically a secret door, so you can click that and have it slide downwards, and then once you've uncovered the chest, you can select that and move it up, which is a pretty cool piece of interaction using a really simple system, I think. Other than those details, we've got a rather nice, interesting layout tactically, I think. I think tiered, raised surfaces like this are really easy to make use of. You could put enemies up high that are hard to reach, or an opportunity for a nimble player character to climb up and make use of the terrain themselves. It's a pretty compact scene, but I think a really cool one. I've also put together a nighttime version of the scene with some simple lighting in here, because I think every scene needs a nighttime version, but also because I just kind of love these dynamic skies that you can use now with the moving clouds, and I think the kind of atmosphere you can get with them is quite variable. Like in this case, I think this is a kind of a bit of a chill atmosphere to it even. That might just be me though. And speaking of, something that I do say a lot, but I think is true for this scene as well, is that I think this might be good for a landing page for the party. For example, if you arrange the PCs over here, have a chest for the party inventory on the left, a desk with a book for a journal, and just have some real nice atmosphere here on a sort of party landing page in 3D. Alright, the next map we're looking at is also from Afant, the Coaching Inn Exterior. This one's another autumnal map, and has some great details in it too. We've got this walled-off courtyard for the inn, with this open area round at the back here. And then for the front of the place, he's used this castle arch piece here and put a gate underneath that, which opens up to let people through into the main courtyard itself. The courtyard itself is this nice open area with this kind of path through it. On one side, you've got the post for tying up the horses, with one already there having a drink. This animated horse here is actually from the map-making compendium, part of 3D Canvas, as well as this carpenter's workbench under here. Besides that, tucked away in the corner is another hidden feature. This ladder here is long enough to reach the first floor, So if we click on it, then it moves over here. That's a really simple but effective use of map there amongst active tile triggers. A little bit of interactivity, I think, goes a long way in scenes like this. Really kind of opens the place up and makes it seem more like a real place that the players are in, rather than just, a static backdrop for them to look at. Over on the other side, we've got the place for parking the carts, the main door into the inn itself, and then round the corner, a side entrance tucked away to the loading area for the inn supplies here. I think it's always nice to have extra options for entering a place, like in this case we've got these 3 doors here on the ground floor, but we'll look into that a bit more in a minute. Overall, I think this is a very nice and detailed map for one of the places that every party is going to visit sooner or later, and we've got a few variants of this one too, just add a bit more flexibility. This first one is a daytime variant. I was considering using the infinite matte surround to make the scene look a bit more kind of in the world, but that would mean covering up all these details here along the sides, like the plants hanging down across the edge or the rocks embedded in the dirt, for example. But overall, I think this looks pretty cool in the daytime as well as in the night. We've also got a wintry version of the map with snow on the rooftops and kind of melted snow around on the floor. It's all sunk into the earth a bit and gotten a bit slushy, but it's pretty good for the atmosphere, I think. I'm obviously biased towards wintry scenes myself, but I think it's always good to have a little bit of snow. And then, of course, we've got the daytime snowy version, which is definitely the brightest variant. But overall, same sort of idea. We've got snow on the roofs, snow on the road here, and on the path outside, and of course, on all these plants as well, partial snow coverage on all of them. So the logical follow-on to that would be inside the inn itself. And so we've got the coaching inn interior here. This one, I think, is a very comfy looking tavern, which again has some good detail work and good ties into the exterior map. Like, for example, the loading gate over here, the main door over here, and then the side door all the way over here. This map, I think, suits close-in camera work, since it's a fairly compact place, so the camera's probably going to be quite close anyway, but also because things are generally pretty detailed, like the shelves behind the bar all being stocked with various things, for example, the food in the kitchen, covering the various tables in here, or even the supplies out in the hall, all sort of laid out on rugs there to protect the hardwood flooring, presumably. Overall, a pretty slick tavern design, I think, a nice kind of linear design to it, very close in and narrow, which I think can be quite positive. In the interest of flexibility, there's also an unfurnished version with some cooler lighting to it, which could be used for an even wider variety of purposes, either as an abandoned building or as something like a bandit hideout or a lair of some kind. I think the cooler lighting really gives it a kind of slightly more ominous look to it. The default furnished one has quite warm lighting in it, which makes it look, a bit more welcoming. Whereas this one here's got a kind of light blue-grey kind of colour to it, which I think is very appropriate. Next up, we've got another take on a tavern by Severo, the Hunter's Lodge. This one's rather bigger than the last one, and might be better suited to be a base of operations for a city-based player party. We've also got a few features on the map that would help facilitate that, aside from the more open space. Here on the main floor, over by the door, we've got this notice board with notices on it, and a kind of example mat function in here, so that whenever a player clicks on it, it shows them an image or a journal page. Currently, it doesn't work for me because I'm as the GM, so obviously your own content is going to be different, but the idea is you could plug something into these here, like an image or a journal entry or that sort of thing, and kind of make this like a physical quest log for the party almost. You could even split it up into many separate sheets and have them all linked to different journal pages, and then use them as actual in-universe diegetic documents posted on the door here. I think stuff like that can add a real sense of continuity to an adventure, like especially if you keep resolved stuff up there for a while at least, so that the party could have a record of the things they'd accomplished that are just in the map that they could see. Anyway, up the stairs we've got some rooms up here with a double bedroom and some bunk rooms, perfect for if the party's just visiting. And then over here at the upstairs fireplace, we have a secret door that leads to a back passage here. That, of course, leads down some stairs through some corridors to this secret hideout room here, If this is a player's base of operations, this might be where their more sensitive or dangerous artifacts are kept, for example. Or if it's the base of some antagonist, it could be a secret room, which is the perfect sort of place for the party to investigate. Overall, I think the map has a pretty comprehensive set of features here for a kind of city-based adventuring situation. For those looking for a simpler version of the map, there's also the Hunter's Lodge without the hideout. This is obviously the same map, just minus the hideout at the back. So it's more appropriate if this is just a tavern that the party are passing through, or if you're just going to have an encounter out here in the main area and you don't really want people getting distracted with a hidden sort of back room that there's nothing actually in. Overall, I think it's generally a good idea to have variants of maps like this. Next up, we've got a map from Violet. This one's called the Pirate Cave, and it's a very stylized sort of experience. I've got the default camera angle looking in through this gap here, but if we zoom out a bit, it's a good old-fashioned pirate skull rock. Anyway, inside we've got quite a comprehensive pirate lair that's bigger than it looks, starting with these rocks high up with the walkways between them and the ladders heading downwards towards the lower levels. It kind of makes me think of some of the areas in Dark Souls in a way. I might be thinking of like No Man's Wharf from Dark Souls 2, if anyone's played that. Might be just because of the boat, really. But anyway, assuming the party come in from above here, once they've headed on down, they'll end up in this camp area with the tables and chairs and barrels of supplies and so on, and the piers leading out to the boat. And then over on the other side of the cove, we've got some guard towers, some more supplies here, possibly more valuable ones, and also some cells here that are linked to these three levers, using the good old-fashioned hiding and unhiding. Since we're in as a GM at the moment, we can see both at once, but the idea is that by clicking the lever, you hide one and unhide the other, so you move them up or down from the player's point of view, which I think is a pretty cool effect. Very simple but effective sort of situation going on there, and a good situation for a kind of Pirate Cove rescue. Pirate adventure's always a good theme. The next one we'll also look at from Violet is another one of these extremely stylish ones, the Astral Sea. I do love this use of dynamic sky, along with some unnatural tints to put the map in a different area, or in this case, the astral plane. This area here is a gateway hub, as you can probably tell by all the gateways. By default, with the way the scene's set up right now, these gateways are set up so that if you enter one, you'll appear out of a different one in the scene. But of course, considering this is the astral plane, which kind of links to all other planes, or most of them at least, these portals could also link to a great many very important locations. So it could be like an astral plane travel hub if you've got a plane hopping adventure, for example. This could be the place that the party travels through to get to their destination. Overall, very stylish and very striking. I rather like it. And I've also made a blue version of it myself, because for some reason I've always imagined the astral plane as being blue, even though I don't think that's technically correct, according to the Forgotten Realms, or whichever the most popular planar setting is used in D&D. But if your setting's astral plane is blue, well, this will be quite convenient for you. So, lastly then, and before this scene runs on too long, the inventory scene for this month. It's kind of a huge one, both in terms of the actual physical size of all the objects we've got in here, and also in terms of just how many we have. Somewhere between 400 and 450 props that can broadly be categorized as rocks and trees. These are going to be a great help to you map makers out there. Starting with the largest items at the back here, you can see we've got a collection of rock outcroppings in various shapes with 3 styles. We've got a kind of deserty look, a wintry, snowy look, and then a more sort of general stone look. These pieces are great for sort of blocking out cliffs, or generally using to fill in rocky areas, because you can scale these up a little bit past the huge size that they already are. Like if we zoom in, this is the size of, a 1x1 square. So you can easily fill in big chunks of the map with these things. Further towards the back, at the other corner, we've got another collection of very large rocks in this kind of craggy, cracked style. So they kind of look a bit more like conglomerates. Down here we've got some more mid-sized boulders in the sort of desert snow general style, and then a whole bunch of smaller rocks for detail work in similar styles and various shapes. Like for example, these narrow rocks can be used as standing stones. They kind of look like they are, but generally they're great for filling in any kind of narrow gap that you might have between 2 or more other rocks. There's a kind of simpler, more rounded shapes here for like covering up seams, for example. and then more detailed ones over here when you want to add a little bit of detail to a corner or an edge, for example. There's a collection of floor details in the form of collections of loose rocks and patches of dried dirt, and then a lot of very small rocks for use in detailing. So these will probably be overkill for most scenes, but we're making sure we've got all the tools available to fit a wide variety of situations. Like, again, in the grand scheme of things, these aren't that small considering this is a 1x1 square, but, from a map making perspective, these are, very small detail rocks. There's also more kind of collections of rock clutter, and then more smooth detailed rocks over here. It kind of just keeps going. I do kind of hate to gloss over it because there are a lot of kind of distinct shapes here that are useful for various things, but that kind of extreme detail is kind of unnecessary in an update video, really. So that's a glance at the rocks. Next up is all these trees. A lot of these are split up into 3 styles as well. We've got a kind of wintry style over here, autumn, and then a kind of summer or spring style. And there's various different shapes of tree that would fit in different places. Like these ones down here, a little bit more scraggly. There's some bare branches on some of these, that sort of thing. The ones over here, for example, have kind of more rounded, denser canopies and longer trunks. There's a collection of dead trees over to one side over here, a collection of palm trees over here, which are comparatively quite small, but, very varied, and you can scale those up easily enough. And then in the center here, we've got a lot of trees with very thin trunks, whether that's because they're birch trees or just because, they have thin trunks, for instance. All these trees are another thing that I kind of hate to gloss over, but again, going into extreme detail on this is probably a bit much for an update video. I definitely recommend anyone who's at all interested in creating their own exterior scenes take a look at the inventory scene this month, sort of have a look around all the bits and pieces that we've got lying around here, and see if anything gives them ideas, because there's a lot of things you can do with these, I think, and get some really unique looks. With that, though, I'm going to wrap up the 3D section of this update video here. As ever, comments are appreciated, so leave them down below or in the Discord or so on, and I'll see y'all later.
With the Baileywiki landing pages module, we're very excited to announce the version 2.0 of our complex landing pages. No more do we have a variety of elements that are going to be hidden and shown all together or not at all based off of the interactions to the side. Instead, these now will change the images temporarily and store variables on all of these interactive elements. So what that means is that when I, as a dungeon master, open up the journals tab, it's just for me. It's not for my players. My players can do that individually. So if Swift wants to open up journals, he can look at that independently of Baileywiki, who's looking at characters. So this is a huge leap forward, and it took quite a bit of tinkering with active tau triggers, variables, and some clever macros in here. And we can see that if we switch over to the different modes, these same buttons have different images and different functionalities. We've also added the ability to customize things even further than before. In addition to being able to change the images for these frame dividers, you can have them be independent across the different modes here between journals and characters, and also in the main menu, so you can get even more granular with that. And we have a whole lot of other fun pieces in store there too. To check out all the new features and details, visit the new blank template scene that has a lot of annotations on it. This will walk you through some of the basics of what we've changed and what's going on here now. If you click on the journals or character sheets, then you'll be able to see all of the UI elements, and you can watch those as you edit things. The master control button here works much the same as it did, but we've expanded the functionality a little bit, adding some additional options. For example, if we go into the background section, we can now change the image, and it's actually going to open up a file picker that will start in the background section of the landing pages module, but you can navigate to whatever image you want. And we're actually leveraging a token magic effects filter here now in order to change this background image, which means we can do some pretty cool things like going in and zooming or panning and rotating the image that we've selected. We can even get into some really fun things with scrolling, and we'll show that in a moment. Additionally, as we mentioned, those frames and dividers can be customized depending upon what menu you're in. So if you go to customizing it and select the journals entry, you can make a choice that is going to be independent of the character's entry and the right side. You also have the option to change it for everything, and this is going to carry through for a few different elements as far as all of the UI goes. You can make changes that will affect things in specific modes, so you can add a little extra visual clarity for your players and yourself when you're navigating through the landing pages. Of course, we've also included a few different example landing pages for you. They're not configured with the journal images or character images and links, so you'll need to go ahead and set those up yourself. You can do so using the configuration tool to set up the images, and then whenever you're configuring any of these pieces that need configuration, there'll be landings that say change journal entry below, etc., to give you a guide on what to do and where to go in order to customize the few things that you still have to dig into the tile for. You may also notice that there are some really beautiful fonts over to the side that are not stock Foundry. And that's because in this release, we have also added some custom font support to the Baileywiki landing pages module. We've picked out a variety of really fantastic fonts, some of which are in other modules as well, so you can use this instead of or in addition to other modules that add fonts, and we think this is a really great collection to really personalize your landing pages even further, and you can even take this into your journal entries and other places where custom fonts are used. So with this more technically minded landing pages update, there is a whole lot more customization that you can do specifically with the complex 2.0 versions of the landing pages. There's a lot of really cool features here and some cool ideas that we're eager to expand upon ourselves and see you as a community expand upon. So we're very excited for you all to get your hands on it. Let us know what you think and let us know your ideas for what you'd like to see expanded upon with landing pages in the future. We obviously didn't cover everything here in terms of how to use this, so be on the lookout for some updated tutorials on the how to use the Baileywiki landing pages module playlist.
First part of our Dungeondraft release, I've got the typical inventory scenes and then some of these scenes that we use to make a bunch of the other assets. So you can come in here and see what kind of tags might be used. As usual, if you've got Essential Utils mod installed, you can just click on these, show object info, and see which pack they're in and what they're called. These are all the things that you saw in the BTT side: rubble, pillars, bases, but you even have textures and patterns. And you even have some paths. You have this path specifically. And I really like this because it scales really well, but you can draw just one side of the path and it kind of has this perspective wall on it. And then you can also draw over it and have the perspective wall on both sides, and it's pretty seamlessly fits together. So you can, create walls for your dungeons in lots of configurations, either having it, double or only single-sided with that perspective. You have some colorable elements as well. All of these pieces come together to ultimately kit bash things too. So right now, this is just more pieces. This is what I call walls. These are things that have like a wall built into it. They work really well for just dropping in and just kind of forming up, right? So you just put them in and they mash together really easily, and they make, essentially they form up the parts of a building that used to be, right? Now you're just looking at the remnants of the footprints. You have all the stone toppers. These were kit bashed from all the original pieces. I wanted you to see how I kit bash these together so you can make your own. This is how I made a lot of those really monumental components that you can use as toppers. And then ultimately everything came together here with these rooms, right? So you can deconstruct how I put these together, go build your own. Use this as a little bit of a guide for how to build your own ruins in Dungeondraft, and then you can export these as single tiles. Some of the other rooms that you saw, you notice they don't have anything where there might be like an overhead tile or a topper. I generally left those out so I could add those later. That way I could always remove them later as well. So this is kind of everything that's just sort of like waist level. Here's more rooms, all pieced together from all those components that you saw earlier. You can see it's pretty flexible in terms of the system. And you can fill in the gaps with the pattern shape. right? So this is just a pattern drawn in here. So if you feel like you've got the good outline of a room, but you don't want there to be a gap there, just throw a pattern underneath it and you're good to go.
In the Baileywiki Assets A pack, we have created a variety of new totems and effigies that you can use to add some interesting decor to your underground realms, your goblin encampments, and your roadside ruins. Included are also a variety of different pieces that are super kit bashable that you can use to create a variety of new totems and effigies or use in other creative ways. And as per usual, all of these have colorable variants that you can set to whatever tone your heart desires. Once your players have made their way into those creepy dungeons, they can delight in finding a mimic inside of that chest. As you can see, we've increased our roster of mimics, and there's a little bit more variety here now with some tentacled eldritch type mimics, some plant like mimics, and a demonic hand. And included with this are also some bits for you to either customize the mimics even further or use them for some other haunting decor. This is a great way to terrify your party, and you can see some of them in action in the Foundry VTT release as well. And in addition to all of the new assets in the pack, we've also finished remastering all of our wooden chests. So all of those are now a little bit more cohesive with our newer, higher detailed assets. So you can find those in their usual place in the storage tag and also in the Kitbash materials wood. You can find all of these pieces within the Baileywiki Assets A Dungeondraft pack and under the tags that have been on screen throughout this. You can also double check those tags on the BW Assets A inventory map included in the monthly Dungeon Draft post.
So that's it for this release. I hope you guys enjoy it. I hope that you do all sorts of good stuff with these ruins and all the other pieces that you saw. We have some really interesting news that we're going to announce here. So if you don't follow the channel already or regularly, please hit that little bell icon and you'll be notified when we have new videos and things come out. But the next one this month should be pretty interesting, I think. We've got some fun news for you guys. Kind of a first time thing for the Baileywiki team. So with that, I'll keep you in suspense. Thanks everybody for all your support for the channel and everything that we do. Thanks for letting us adventure in the BTT world with you. And as usual, have fun making your maps.